The sun shone brightly over the lush, rolling meadows, where flowers of every imaginable color swayed in the gentle breeze. The air was thick with the fragrance of blossoms, and laughter rang through the fields as Persephone, the young and radiant daughter of Demeter, played among them. With each step, she left a trail of crushed petals, her fingers brushing against the delicate stems as she picked an armful of blooms. The nymphs surrounded her, their joyful voices blending with the whisper of the wind. Unbeknownst to Persephone, she was being watched. From the depths of the underworld, Hades, the sullen and brooding god of the dead, had long admired her beauty. The darkness of his realm had left him yearning for warmth, and in Persephone, he saw the embodiment of life itself. Yet he knew Demeter, the goddess of a harvest, would never allow her cherished daughter to leave her side. Determined, Hades sought the counsel of Zeus, the mighty king of the gods. Zeus, whether out of indifference or quiet approval, did not oppose Hades' desire. One day, as Persephone wandered farther from her companions, her eyes fell upon an extraordinary sight, a narcissus unlike any she had ever seen. Its petals glowed with an otherworldly light, and the scent it released was intoxicating, making her momentarily dizzy with delight. As she reached out to pluck it, the ground beneath her trembled. A deafening crack split the earth apart, and from the chasm emerged a golden chariot drawn by four immense, black horses. Before Persephone could react, strong hands encircled her waist, lifting her into the air. She screamed, calling for her mother, for the nymphs, for anyone who could hear her. But the chariot was already plunging into the yawning abyss, the earth sealing behind them as though nothing had ever disturbed it. The only witnesses to her abduction were Helios, the all-seeing sun god, and Hecate, the enigmatic goddess of magic and crossroads. Yet they remained silent, their knowledge hidden as Persephone was carried into the depths below. As they descended into the underworld, Persephone struggled fiercely against her captor, her cries echoing through the cavernous realm of the dead. Hades held fast, though his grip was firm rather than cruel. His heart ached at her distress, but he would not release her. This was the queen he had chosen, and the underworld would be all the richer with her presence. Meanwhile, Demeter's world crumbled. When she discovered her daughter was missing, she scoured the earth in a frantic search. She called to the nymphs, the rivers, and the winds, but none could tell her where Persephone had gone. For days she wandered, her sorrow turning into anguish. The golden fields of wheat withered under her grief, the trees shed their leaves prematurely, and the rivers ran dry. Mortals cried out for mercy, but Demeter was deaf to their pleas, consumed only by the loss of her daughter. Eventually, the goddess reached the kingdom of Eleusis, where she took refuge in disguise. There, she was welcomed by King Celeus and his wife, Metanera, who offered her a place in their household. In gratitude, Demeter sought to bestow immortality upon their son, Demophan, by placing him in the sacred fire each night. But when Metanera interrupted the ritual in horror, the child's fate was sealed, and Demeter revealed her true form, her radiant divinity shining through the disguise. It was only after much wondering that Helios, moved by her suffering, finally revealed what he had seen. In rage, Demeter confronted Zeus, demanding her daughter's return. But the king of the gods, bound by his previous agreement with Hades, could not simply undo what had been done. Instead, he sent Hermes, the swift-footed messenger, to the underworld to negotiate Persephone's release. In the shadowed halls of the dead, Persephone had slowly begun to accept her fate. Though she had been taken against her will, she was not powerless. She had begun to learn the ways of the underworld, to command respect from the souls that dwelled there. Still, when Hermes arrived with Zeus' decree, her heart leapt with longing for the world above. Hades, seeing her Joe, knew he could not keep her entirely, but he was not willing to let her go completely either. With quiet cunning, he offered Persephone a single pomegranate. She was weary but also starving after her time in the underworld. As she ate, the juices stained her lips, and too late, she realized the consequence. Anyone who consumed the food of the underworld was bound to it forever. When Hermes brought Persephone back to her mother, their reunion was both joyful and sorrowful. Demeter embraced her daughter, her tears watering the barren earth, causing flowers to bloom once more. Yet when she learned of the pomegranate, her relief turned to despair. Persephone could not stay with her forever. A compromise was reached. For part of the year, Persephone would walk the earth beside her mother, bringing life and abundance to the land. But for the remaining months, she would return to the underworld as its queen, ruling beside Hades in the realm of the dead. Thus, the cycle of the seasons was born. When Persephone was with Demeter, the earth flourished, spring and summer bathed the land in warmth and light. But when she descended back into the underworld, Demeter mourned, and the world turned cold, stripped of its greenery until her daughter returned. No longer just a maiden, Persephone had become a goddess of both life and death. She was Kore, the bringer of spring, but also the formidable queen of the underworld. Commanding the spirits of the dead with wisdom and mercy, she presided over the judgment of souls, her voice carrying weight alongside Hades, Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus. And though she had been taken, she was never merely a victim, for she had carved her own path, balancing the realms of the living and the dead with grace and power. Persephone was also honored in the great Thesmophoria, a festival dedicated to her and Demeter, where women gathered to celebrate fertility, the cycle of life, and the sacred bond between mother and daughter. As Kore, she was especially revered by young, unmarried women, who saw in her the transition from maidenhood to adulthood, mirroring their own journeys. Her story lived on, celebrated in the great Eleusinian mysteries, where initiates sought the promise of renewal, the knowledge that even in death, life would begin again. And so, the myth of Persephone endure, a tale of loss and return, of light and darkness, forever woven into the rhythm of the changing seasons.